Imagine the only person being able to take care of you in your most desperate time of need being your sister or your neighbor. Women were taking care of the sick and the wounded with no higher education, just going off maternal instincts. This occurred until 1860, when the first nurse training school was opened in London. The development of nursing as a profession that needed a higher education was not a quick process. There were multiple monumental people that were involved in the education that nurses receive today. Prior to 1860, nurses did not receive any sort of education prior to doing the nursing duties. The Crimean War established a need for nurses, which pushed young entrepreneurs to make strides in healthcare and open up training schools to provide nurses with the necessary education. Working in healthcare myself and being a nursing student, I have learned about the history that has evolved the education that nurses received and how this has transformed healthcare as a whole. Prior to the first nursing program, nurses did not receive training or education prior to the job they were asked to do. This was specifically a problem surrounding the various wars, when nurses were being pushed to their limit trying to save the lives of soldiers with no further education. The Crimean War in Turkey lasted from 1853 to 1856, and this wounded many British soldiers. According to Beth Perry Black, Florence Nightingale from England took 38 soldiers to a hospital in Turkey. Nightingale ended up working at this hospital and pretty much running it. She cared for these soldiers even though she was on the opposing side of the war. Mary Siegel was another person who came during this time of the war. She was a wealthy Black woman and traveled to Crimea to offer her services at the hospital that Nightingale was running. However, she was refused by Nightingale. Once she was refused, she opened up her own hospital and gave her own services to the wounded soldiers at her own hospital and even attended battlefields to care for these soldiers. I have a picture here from the Professional Nursing Textbook by Beth Perry Black. It's a picture of both Florence Nightingale here. Here's Florence Nightingale, and then Mary Siegel here. The American Civil War was another war that caused a lot of issues for nurses. It lasted from 1861 to 1873. It required a high level of care due to the amount of trauma. However, there was no professional nurses and no organized medical system. Sisters of Catholic churches were being recruited as nursing staff. Dorothea Dix created a month-long training program in New York for the Civil War. She would recruit nurses to come and be trained, and then they would go and work on the battlefield of the Civil War. This had a very powerful outcome. A lot of people volunteered to do this. Thousands volunteered, actually. She trained over 3,000 Union nurses, according to Norwood. The first nurse school opened in London, as we're moving forward now, and set the platform that nursing schools would then follow in the United States. From the text of Beth Perry Black, Florence Nightingale founded this first nurse training school in 1860 after the completion of the Crimean War. The school was established at St. Thomas Hospital in London. Nightingale worked to improve conditions at the hospital, around the environment of the hospital, and also patient experiences. She published the book Notes on Nursing, What It Is and What It Is Not. That's according to Alexander. After the Civil War was completed, nursing schools started to open in the United States as the U.S. Sanitary Commission and physicians started to recognize the importance of a higher education for nurses. In 1873, 3 nursing schools opened in New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. The number of nursing schools increased consistently by the 19th century, reports Black. With the number of nursing schools increasing such consistently, there is sure to be some change. Since the original onset of nursing school, education provided has changed drastically. Initially, completion of the program itself was enough to go out and work. There was no licensure exam that was needed. From the text of Beth Perry Black, it wasn't until 1923 that all states required an exam for licensure. New York was the first state to mandate a licensure exam to practice, and this wasn't even fully mandated until 1947. There are various programs offered to become a nurse, diploma program and degree programs. Diploma programs were the initial programs that were offered in nursing schools. And then it's branched off to being able to get a bachelor's degree or an associate degree. Black reports the first bachelor degree program was in 1909 at University of Minnesota. This ranges from 3 to 5 years of schooling, and the end licensure exam is the NCLEX exam. Associate degree programs were formed in 1952 as a result of the nursing shortage from World War II. They created a shorter nursing program so they can get nurses in, get them trained, and get them out so they can work during the war. This is a 2-year program, and it still ends with the same NCLEX licensure exam. To sum up, in the mid-1800s, the need for nurses was high, and a select few memorable people, such as Florence Nightingale, took that as an opportunity to make nursing into a profession. Once Nightingale opened up the first nursing school in London, the US was not far after. Since then, the education for nurses has just been growing. Healthcare is known as a field that is ever changing, and the progression of education for nurses is just that.